Her father paid me to break her heart. She paid me double to break his. That line still echoes every time I see his face on the news, the once untouchable billionaire, now a trembling old man sitting before a sea of cameras, drowning in his own scandals. I watch from my couch, coffee gone cold, as the empire he built on control and cruelty burns to ashes in the background. He doesn't know I'm watching. He doesn't know that every headline tearing him apart was set in motion the day he hired me. Back then, I was just a man chasing survival, desperate enough to take any job, even one that required me to fake love and inflict pain. But the rich always forget one thing about pawns like me. I wasn't born to play games with the rich. But when they used me as a pawn, I learned to become a board member. When people hear relationship consultant, they imagine a man in a suit, sipping espresso in a sunlit office, giving advice about love. The truth? I'm a glorified hitman, but for hearts. I don't carry weapons. I carry words. Cold, convincing ones. My job is to end relationships for clients too rich, too cowardly, or too busy to do it themselves. I'm the middleman between desire and destruction. They pay me to say the things they can't. And until that winter, I never said no to a job. I was living in a one-room apartment above a laundromat. The ceiling leaked when it rained, the neighbors fought like it was their full-time job, and my fridge made more noise than my phone. I wasn't proud of what I did, but pride doesn't pay rent. Then one night, I got the call. Mr. Crane would like to meet in person, the voice said. No last name. Just Crane, like I should already know who he was. I did. Everyone did. Richard Crane, billionaire investor, CEO of Crane Industries, philanthropist on paper, predator in business. The kind of man whose name made other men lower their voices. He summoned me to a rooftop restaurant that smelled like money and control. His suit looked like it cost more than my life. I remember how his watch glinted when he slid an envelope across the table. There's a girl, he said, his tone cold and deliberate. My daughter, Isabella. She's wasting her time, and my resources, on people beneath her. I need you to remind her what heartbreak feels like. At first, I thought I'd misheard. You want me to date her? Date her, he repeated, and then leave her. Publicly. Brutally. You're good at endings, aren't you, Mr. Cole? He said my name like it was a test. I didn't answer. I was too busy looking at the figure on the check. 6 zeros. It was the kind of money that could erase years of mistakes. The kind of money that makes morality feel optional. I took the job. I met Isabella Crane 2 weeks later. She wasn't what I expected. She was sunlight wrapped in sarcasm, witty, sharp, but with an ache in her eyes she tried to hide behind laughter. Unlike her father, she didn't look like money. She looked like freedom trying to breathe inside a glass cage. Our first chance encounter was at a charity gala, all part of Crane's plan. I was introduced as a communications consultant, and she rolled her eyes at the title. Fancy word for liar, she teased, sipping champagne. I laughed. You'd be surprised how often that's true. We clicked faster than I was prepared for. Conversations that were supposed to be rehearsed started feeling real. She talked about wanting to escape her father's world, about how everything in her life was polished but empty. I listened. Too closely. We started seeing each other outside of the script, unplanned dinners, late-night drives. She'd sneak me into her father's guesthouse just to watch movies in our pajamas. She loved cheap food, greasy burgers, oversalted fries, milkshakes that made her giggle when she got whipped cream on her nose. She hated being called princess. She loved listening to the rain. She once said, I don't care if someone has nothing, as long as they don't pretend to be something they're not. That line cut deeper than she realized. Because that's exactly what I was doing, pretending. Every smile, every touch, every word, it started as an act. But somewhere between her laughter and her honesty, the act became a memory I didn't want to end. She'd call me at midnight, her voice soft, saying she couldn't sleep. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing, childhood dreams, her mother's absence, my fake stories about past jobs. And every time she said goodnight, I'd feel the noose of guilt tighten around my chest. Mr. Crane would check in periodically. Cold messages. Brief calls. Is she falling? He'd ask. And I'd lie, saying it was going according to plan, even though the only one falling was me. One night, Isabella cooked for me, burned pasta, oversalted sauce, and the biggest smile I'd ever seen. She said it was her first time cooking without a chef. She laughed at herself, embarrassed, but I ate every bite. It was terrible. But it was real. That's when it hit me, somewhere in this cruel, choreographed performance, she had given me something no client ever had, sincerity. And I, the man who sold fake affection for a living, didn't know what to do with it. She fell asleep on my shoulder that night, whispering, "You make me feel safe." And all I could think was, I was the storm she didn't see coming. As I watched her breathe, peaceful and unguarded, I knew something irreversible had shifted. I was supposed to break her heart. But she was quietly fixing mine. Falling for Isabella felt like getting drunk in reverse. It didn't hit all at once, it crept up, slow and quiet, until I was too far gone to stop it. I told myself I was still in control. Still just playing a role. But every time she smiled at me, I forgot the script. Days turned into weeks. Our arrangement, the one Mr. Crane had orchestrated like a business plan, began to feel less like work and more like living. We'd wander through parts of the city her father's bodyguards never followed. She loved thrift stores, street musicians, and overpriced lattes in tiny cafes that smelled like nostalgia. Sometimes, she'd stop to take pictures of things no one else noticed, chipped paint on a park bench, a stray cat sleeping in the sun. "I like things that aren't perfect," she'd say. "They don't pretend." That line haunted me. Because I was pretending every second. At night, I'd sit in my apartment with my phone buzzing from Crane's unread messages, the words, progress, flashing like threats. I'd type replies and delete them. He wanted updates, emotional leverage. He wanted details of how close she was to falling, how deeply the knife would go when I twisted it. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Isabella had started opening up about her past, piece by piece. The more I listened, the clearer it became that this wasn't her first betrayal, her father had made sure of that. There'd been someone before me. A real boyfriend, not a hired one. A young architect she met in college. They'd been serious, maybe even in love, until the guy disappeared without warning. No calls, no explanations. "He just ghosted me," she said one night, her voice trembling as she stared into her glass of wine. "Dad said he was a fraud, that he only wanted my money. But I never believed that. He was kind." I didn't say anything, but the puzzle pieces fit too perfectly. Richard Crane had done this before. He didn't want anyone near his daughter unless he could control the ending. And now I was his new weapon of choice. Every time Isabella touched me, her hand finding mine in a crowd, her laugh echoing through quiet spaces, the guilt pressed deeper. I wasn't just betraying her. I was becoming another version of the man who'd already broken her. One night, my phone rang while we were at her place. It was Crane. I silenced it. The second it stopped, it rang again. I excused myself, stepped outside into the cold night, and answered. His voice was sharp enough to cut steel. "Why haven't you checked in?" "I'm working," I said, my breath fogging in the air. "You're delaying." "I'm being careful." He scoffed. "Careful doesn't pay. You're not special, Mr. Cole. You're a tool. And tools only matter while they're useful. Do your job before you become disposable." The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, watching the city lights flicker like warning signals. For the first time, I realized something terrifying: he didn't just own the outcome. He owned me. When I went back inside, Isabella was sitting on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, scrolling through her phone. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. She studied me for a moment, as if she could sense the storm behind my eyes. "You look like someone told you a secret you didn't want to hear." I smiled weakly. "Something like that." She didn't push. She never did. Instead, she handed me a blanket, then leaned her head against my shoulder. We sat in silence, and I realized how easily she trusted me, how completely. It made me sick. The next few days, I tried to create distance. I answered her messages slower. Made excuses not to meet. But she always found a way to pull me back in. One evening, I found her waiting outside my apartment building, wearing a hoodie instead of her usual designer coat, holding a bag of takeout. "I missed you," she said simply. "You've been disappearing." I wanted to tell her everything right then. To confess that her father had hired me, that I'd been lying from the start, that the love she thought was real was built on a transaction. But I couldn't. Because the second I did, she'd look at me like everyone else, like another Crane puppet. So I did what cowards do. I let her in. We sat on the floor of my apartment, eating noodles from the carton, laughing at bad TV reruns. She teased me about my broken lamp and my leaky ceiling. "You live like a poet," she joked. "Tragic, mysterious, probably cold." I laughed, but there was truth in her tone. She didn't care about the money, the labels, she cared about me. Or who she thought I was. That night, she told me something that stuck. "I know people think I'm fragile," she said quietly. "Like I'm porcelain. But I'm not. I just want something real. Even if it hurts." And all I could think was, "You're asking the wrong man for that." Days blurred into nights, and the weight of the secret grew unbearable. Crane's calls came more frequently, each one colder than the last. "End it soon," he ordered. "She's getting too attached." I wanted to say, "So am I." But I didn't. Instead, I started to write a letter, my confession. I poured everything into it: how he'd hired me, how I'd lied, how sorry I was. I planned to give it to her the night before I vanished. But life doesn't let you choose your timing. The next day, Isabella showed up at my door, tears in her eyes. Her father had cancelled her credit cards, restricted her accounts, and sent her a message saying she was too distracted by poor company. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "He's trying to cage me again." I held her while she cried, and every fiber of me screamed to tell her the truth, that the man comforting her was the one holding the knife. But she looked up at me, eyes glassy but sincere, and whispered, "You're the only person who feels real in my life." And that's when I knew, no matter how this ended, I'd already done the one thing I swore I'd never do. I'd become the villain in someone else's love story. And when the truth finally came out, because it always does, her heartbreak wouldn't just destroy her. It would destroy me too. There's no easy way to destroy someone who trusts you. You don't realize how much they've given you until you start rehearsing the words that will make them break. The night I ended things with Isabella, the city felt unnaturally quiet, like it knew something irreversible was about to happen. Mr. Crane had called earlier that day. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His tone was enough to make the air feel heavy. "Do it tonight," he said. "You've had your fun. It's time to earn what I paid for." I tried to argue, said she wasn't ready, said it would devastate her. He only laughed. "That's the point, Mr. Cole. Devastation teaches discipline. Don't make me question your usefulness." And that was it. My deadline. I told myself it was just another job, but deep down, I knew this wasn't a contract anymore, it was a confession waiting to destroy two people. I met her at the pier, the one we discovered weeks before, hidden away from the city's noise. She loved that spot, said the world felt smaller there, quieter, like we were invisible. The irony burned. She showed up in a long beige coat, hair undone, no makeup. Just her, simple, unguarded, human. She smiled when she saw me. You sounded strange on the phone. Is everything okay? I looked at her and almost said no. Almost told her the truth. But instead, I recited the words I'd practiced, the ones Crane had wanted me to say. I think we should stop seeing each other. The smile froze on her face. Stop. What are you talking about? I forced myself to sound detached. It's not working. You want something serious. I don't. Her eyes flickered, confusion, then hurt, then disbelief. Ethan, if this is about my father. It's not, I lied, cutting her off. It's about me. I can't do this anymore. She stepped closer, desperate, searching my face for some trace of truth. No. Something's wrong. You don't just wake up and stop caring. I looked away, afraid of what she'd see if I didn't. I never cared as much as you thought. Her voice cracked. You're lying. I stayed silent. That was the cruelest thing, silence. It gives the other person space to imagine the worst. She begged once more, her voice trembling. Ethan, please, just tell me what happened. I can take it. Just don't. I'm sorry. I stepped back. Goodbye, Isabella. And then I walked away before she could see what it was doing to me. The sound that followed, her crying, breaking, will haunt me forever. Crane called me the next morning. He didn't ask how it went. He already knew. When I walked into his office, he was standing by the window, hands behind his back, watching the city like he owned every inch of it. He turned as I entered. Efficient work, he said. You did a man's job. He slid a check across his desk, thick paper, clean ink, no soul. I didn't touch it right away. Do you enjoy this? I asked quietly. He smiled thinly. Enjoyment is irrelevant. Results matter. I wanted to tell him he was a monster. But I didn't. Because monsters don't care what their prey thinks. So I took the check. I told myself it was for survival. For rent. For peace. But peace never came. The days blurred together after that. The money vanished faster than I could count it, expensive bottles, sleepless nights, cheap distractions. Every sip burned like punishment, every sunrise mocked me for still existing. I tried to forget her, the way she'd laugh when she got flour on her face, the way she'd hum off-key when she was nervous, the way she'd say, "You're safe with me," like she actually believed it. I replayed that night over and over, imagining different versions, ones where I told her the truth, ones where we ran, ones where I refused Crane's job altogether. But reality stayed the same, she was gone, and I'd been the one to erase her. I didn't answer calls anymore. Didn't take new clients. Didn't open my curtains. Then, one night, weeks later, my phone buzzed. A single message. From unknown number. I know everything. My heart stopped. The message was followed by a second one. Meet me. Tomorrow. Same pier. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced through every possibility, exposure, revenge, confrontation. But when I got there, she was already waiting. Isabella. She looked different. Colder. Sharper. The warmth I remembered was gone, replaced by an eerie calm that scared me more than her tears ever could. You don't look surprised, she said as I approached. I figured the truth would find me eventually, I admitted. She smiled, a small, brittle curve. You're honest now. That's new. I'm sorry, I said. The words felt useless, too small to carry what I meant. She studied me like I was a puzzle she'd already solved. My father told me everything. How he paid you. How you pretended. How he laughed when I cried. I swallowed hard. Then I know you hesitated, she interrupted. He said you got soft. That you almost ruined his little experiment. Her voice didn't shake. That was what unnerved me most. She wasn't angry. She was controlled. Calculating. I should hate you, she said. But I don't. Because now I see something I never saw before. What's that? She stepped closer, her perfume mixing with the salt air. You're his weakness. I frowned. What are you talking about? He trusts you, she said simply. You're the man he bragged about, the one who did what no one else could. The one who broke me. She tilted her head. But what happens when that same man turns on him? I stared at her. Isabella, what are you planning? Her smile deepened, not cruel, but deliberate. Revenge. And I want your help. I laughed, half in disbelief. You want me to help you? Yes, she said. Because you owe me. And because no one would suspect it. I shook my head. Your father would kill me. Not if he doesn't see it coming, she said. I'll make sure he doesn't. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, the same figure her father had paid me. Only this one had another set of zeros. I'm paying you double, she said. To pretend again. I blinked. Pretend? Be my boyfriend, she said. Publicly. Everywhere he can see it. I froze. Isabella. She met my eyes with unnerving steadiness. You humiliated me in private. I want to humiliate him in public. Every event, every gala, every business function, I want him to watch the man he bought become the man his daughter loves. It wasn't love in her tone. It was a strategy. Still, I couldn't walk away. I wanted to believe it was guilt that made me agree. But it wasn't. It was fascinating. There was something intoxicating about her transformation, the way innocence had hardened into something dangerous, something precise. She wasn't the same woman I'd broken. She was the storm now. Over the next few weeks, we crafted the illusion, the reborn romance, the defiant public appearances. She introduced me at charity events as her partner, smiled for the cameras, laced her hand in mine. Her father's fury was immediate. He called her. She ignored him. He called me. I didn't answer. Behind the scenes, she was orchestrating every move, feeding the tabloids, leaking stories about our relationship, making sure every headline chipped away at her father's composure. And through it all, she was calm, terrifyingly calm. Late one night, after a public dinner that made every gossip page, I asked her, "Are you sure about this?" She looked at me, eyes steady. You taught me something, Ethan. Pain doesn't go away. But it can be redirected. I wanted to believe I was helping her reclaim control. But deep down, I knew the truth, she was using me now. The same way her father had. And maybe that was fair. I'd earned it. Still, there were moments, fleeting ones, when I saw glimpses of the old Isabella beneath the armor. When she laughed, it sounded hollow, but familiar. When she touched my hand, it lingered too long, like a memory she couldn't fully erase. One night, after too many glasses of wine, she whispered, "You ruined my faith in love, Ethan. But you also ruined his faith in control. That's worth something." Her eyes softened for just a second. Then she added, "Don't fall for me again." I didn't answer. Because part of me already had. The more we played our parts, the more the lines blurred again, the same way they had before. I wasn't sure who was acting anymore. Maybe that was her plan all along. Maybe she wanted me trapped between guilt and desire, loyalty and fear. But there was one thing I knew for certain: the man who once paid me to destroy her was now watching his empire crack, one headline at a time. And the woman I'd betrayed had become the one holding the match. As I stood beside her at another lavish event, cameras flashing, her father watching from across the room with pure venom in his eyes, I finally understood what this had all become. I wasn't hired to play the villain anymore. I was her weapon. We met at odd hours. In empty cafes. On rooftops when the city had gone to sleep. Behind closed doors in rooms that smelled faintly of her perfume and stale coffee. We spoke in whispers the way conspirators do. But the plan wasn't all whispers. It needed noise. It needed spectacle. "Are you sure about this?" I asked on the third night, watching her tilt a glass of red wine against the light. She didn't blink. "He taught me how to make people play along. Now I'm going to teach him how it feels." She was precise. Cold. Surgical. Every idea she threw at me was a chess move. Make him jealous. Make him paranoid. Make him look small in front of the board he'd built. We started small. Public dinners where she'd sit with me in places she knew her father would see. Charity events with photographers. Instagram posts, a hand on a knee, a laugh caught mid-breath, a candid photo captioned with something unbearably ordinary, "Finally trying lobster." Each one calculated. Each one a pinprick in his armor. He noticed. That was inevitable. Crane noticed everything. He sent a terse message through a lawyer: "Cease this theater. You're embarrassing the family." Isabella replied with a photo of us at a gallery opening, me in a blazer stolen from some thrift store, her in a dress that cost more than my first car, and the caption, "Making the world a little brighter." Jealousy is a slow poison. It eats at you quietly until you don't recognize your face in the mirror. I watched it work. From across a room, I watched Mr. Crane's jaw clench when her posts hit his feed. I watched him pace the halls of his offices. I watched his voice turn brittle when he called the house and she didn't pick up. But the plan needed more than jealousy. It needed leverage. It needed dirt that couldn't be smoothed over with PR teams and legal threats. So she gathered allies. Friends who'd long resented Crane's control. A former assistant who'd been fired without severance. A whispering journalist bored of press releases. We didn't forge anything. We pulled old skeletons out of closets Crane thought he'd locked. Emails. Outdated contracts. A pattern of deals that favored him and crushed anyone who disagreed. I remember the night we first discussed actual exposure. We were at my place. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked at me like the architect of an impossible building. "We don't need to destroy him with money," she said. "We need to show the world the man he is. Then the money follows." She was right. Reputation is everything in his world. Remove that, and the foundations crack. There were moments when I hated her for being so calm. For being able to look at me the way she did, unblinking, like a general appraising a soldier's readiness. There were quieter moments too. When she'd let down her guard, when she'd tell me about a childhood memory, or when she'd laugh at a stupid joke. Those moments were small betrayals to her own plan, but they were all I clung to on nights I thought I might drown in what we were doing. I became a part of her public life. We went to galas. We danced. We made out in the back seats of cars and smiled for cameras in front of chandeliers. I learned how to smile like a man in love. I learned how to touch her arm in front of people so it looked natural. I learned how to be something I had never been, a live wire that drew attention. And as the spotlight found us, Mr. Crane's reaction grew more volatile. He stopped hiding his anger. He began to act like a man losing control. He sent lawyers. He tried to buy me off again, but this time with threats wrapped in velvet. "Walk away," his emissary told me once, in the lobby of a hotel. We can make this go away. You had your payment. Take what you can and leave her alone. Who are you? I asked. Their faces were blurred by the mirror and the cheap lighting. Someone who knows what happens to people who don't let things lie, the man said. Think about your options. The message was clear. My past was a map he knew how to read. He could find the skeletons in my closet and give them names. He could call the right people and watch my life be leached of dignity. It was intimidation, old as time. I met his threat with silence. It felt stupidly heroic at first. Then it felt reckless. Then it felt necessary. You could leave, Isabella said one night when I told her about the meeting. Her hands were wrapped around a mug, steam fogging the air between us. And where? I asked. Erase myself? Pretend I never lived these months? She studied me. You stayed for the money. You stayed for me. Stay for this then. Finish it. Her voice was soft but resolute. Mr. Crane tested every line the way a boxer feels an opponent. He ordered background checks on my friends. He dug into the few places I tried to hide, a home address from a decade ago, a court record for a bar fight I never admitted to. He hired firms that made everything smell of danger. Once, a man in a tailored suit left a thin envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside, a single Polaroid of me with Isabella, taken on a night we believed no one was watching. Be careful, the note read. We adapted. We changed cars more often. We altered our routes. But the plan could not be half-hearted. It needed boldness. It needed a moment that would force the world to look. That moment became the family gala. Crane's annual gala was a beast of tradition, donors, board members, journalists, and old money stretching its glossy skin. It was also where he loved to be adored and where he felt most safe. Perfect for a dismantling. Isabella and I mapped it down to the smallest detail, though she never told me everything. Her secrecy was a weapon she wielded as casually as she wore designer heels. She revealed only what I needed. She wanted him to bleed slowly. To watch every stitch of his empire unwind in public. We'll make him look insane, she said. We'll make him look like a man who can't control his own daughter. We'll make him reach. And in the reaching, he'll expose himself. We planned the leaks, old contracts showing preferential deals, internal memos demonstrating manipulation of smaller suppliers, a set of emails that implied coercion. We handed documents to a journalist friend who'd been waiting for a story that would break the coronation of Crane Industries. We made sure the timing was right, just before the gala. A scandal fresh in everyone's mind as they cheered silk-clad philanthropists. I kept replaying the contract in my head. The envelope in Crane's office that had started all of this. How many more envelopes like that existed in the world? How many men had signed things they thought would never surface? My hands shook sometimes when I touched the check he'd given me. It was filthy with history. Doubt crept in. It's always there when you decide to burn a life to warm another. Was Isabella using me the same way? Had she simply replaced one weapon with another? I asked myself if I was just a different kind of pawn now, a sword instead of a spear, still not a player. One night, alone on my roof, I pictured the scene we were building. Crane watching. The cameras catch every twitch. Investors reading the headlines. Board members whispering. Justice, of a sort, being served. Or spectacle. Or both. Isabella found me there. She sat on the concrete, knees drawn up to her chest. Are you going to run? She asked. No, I said. But I'm scared. Good. Be afraid, she said. It keeps us sharp. There are lines you don't cross without asking who you become when you've crossed them. I began to see them blur. I had lied, betrayed, and hurt. Now I was trying to untangle a web with my fingers still stained. Mr. Crane's retaliation escalated. He called meetings with legal teams. He tried to freeze bank accounts. He used influence to threaten the journalist who'd agreed to run with our leaks. There were late-night calls where his voice, years of arrogance stripped away, sounded small and frantic. In one call he said, "You think you can make me look like a villain? I built this city. I can make anyone vanish." And in his fear, there was a truth. Fear made monsters powerful too. We held our ground. We adjusted the leak timeline. We moved the press release to land 2 days before the gala. We coordinated a teaser to social feeds. Isabella rehearsed her performance, the public affection for me, the subtle defiance when her father tried to intervene. She wanted Crane to look like the aggressor in a story where he had built every stage. All the while, I watched myself fall further into something I didn't recognize. Half of me wanted to step away and never speak again. The other half, the part that had tasted the strange rush of being someone else, wanted to see the plan through. I told myself it was for Isabella. I told myself it was for restitution. I told myself it was for a shot at a world where a man couldn't buy his daughter's heart and then throw it away. The days leading to the gala were frenetic. Invitations accepted. Cameras primed. Journalists on standby. The leaks had done their work. The morning of the event, Crane's empire already had hairline cracks running through its polished marble. We dressed for war. She in an emerald gown, me in a suit that tried to pretend to hide the man who'd once been paid to break a heart. We drove in a car she'd arranged, a route that crossed all the places he might see. At the door, she touched my hand. Her fingers were steady. "Tonight we end something," she whispered. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe joy and relief would follow. But something in me was still wary. The past has a way of returning with interest. We walked into a room of chandeliers and murmurs. Somewhere, cameras flashed like distant gunfire. The night of the gala, the man who once bought hearts for sport was about to lose his own. The gala was a cathedral built for wealth. Gold chandeliers hung like constellations, orchestras played songs that cost more than apartments, and the air smelled of polished ego and perfume. Everyone who mattered in Richard Crane's world was there. Politicians. Investors. Journalists pretending not to be journalists. The men who shook his hand tonight would either abandon him tomorrow or swear they'd always doubted him, they just didn't know it yet. And I was standing right in the middle of it, in a rented tuxedo that fit too well, feeling like a fuse pretending to be a candle. Isabella entered the ballroom 5 minutes late, on purpose. The crowd stilled the way a crowd does when power walks into the room. She was breathtaking, emerald dress, hair pulled back, expression cool and untouchable. Her father's eyes snapped toward her the moment she appeared. She didn't look at him. She looked at me. And suddenly, every whisper died. She crossed the room as though it belonged to her, her heels clicking against the marble like punctuation marks. Cameras turned. Every phone lifted. Every gaze followed. When she reached me, she smiled, slow, confident, dangerous. Then she took my hand. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, even though I wasn't. She turned toward the stage where her father was making his usual opening speech, the one he'd given every year about legacy, innovation, and family. He was halfway through his toast when she walked up beside him, hands still in mine. The murmurs rippled like static. "Isabella," he said, caught off guard but still smiling for the cameras. "We can speak after the..." "Actually," she interrupted, her voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom, "I'd like to make an announcement." The microphone fed her words into the air, crystalline and calm. The entire room shifted toward her, the journalists, the investors, the curious strangers who lived for gossip. "I know many of you have questions about my personal life," she said. "So I'll make it simple." She paused, perfectly timed, trained by months of public poise. Then she held up her left hand. The diamond ring glittered under the lights like a blade. I'm engaged, she said. To Ethan Cole. The sound that followed wasn't applause. It was gasping. Her father's smile vanished. For a moment, he just stared, trying to process what he'd heard, what he was seeing, what it meant for the empire built on his control. Then he laughed, brittle, forced, and loud enough to cover the panic in his eyes. This is absurd, he said, turning toward the guests. My daughter's sense of humor has always been creative. But she didn't laugh. Neither did anyone else. It's not a joke, Isabella said quietly. We're in love. Crane's mask cracked. Just slightly. He stepped closer, his voice low, dangerous. Enough. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? She said. Or am I embarrassing you? His hand twitched, the smallest movement, but enough to betray his rage. You think you can parade this con artist in front of me and expect me to? Con artist? Someone echoed in the crowd. Crane turned to face them, realizing too late that all the cameras were already rolling, lenses blinking like eyes of judgment. He pointed at me, his voice booming now, desperate to reclaim the narrative. This man, he said, isn't who you think he is. He's a fraud. A parasite. I hired him months ago to pretend to date my daughter. To make her fall for him and then leave her. To teach her a lesson about trusting people who only want her money. The crowd erupted in whispers. Gasps. Shock. Scandal. I stood still. Every instinct told me to look away, to run, but I didn't. Because this was the moment we planned for. Isabella tilted her head slightly, as if waiting for him to finish digging his own grave. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Funny thing about powerful men, she said, her tone almost conversational. They forget that phones can record. She pressed play. The ballroom filled with his voice, cold, clinical, commanding. Date her, and then leave her. Publicly. Brutally. You're good at endings, aren't you, Mr. Cole? The sound quality was perfect. The silence that followed was absolute. Crane's face was drained of color. No, he stammered, that's out of context. She turned the screen so the cameras could see the timestamp. His office. His desk. The day he'd hired me. There's more, she said. Another clip. His voice again. Devastation teaches discipline. Don't make me question your usefulness. The reporters were already moving closer, phones raised, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Crane's composure disintegrated in real time. You think this changes anything? He shouted. She's lying. She wanted this. He's using her. But no one was listening. Not anymore. Someone from the press shouted, Mr. Crane, did you admit to paying someone to emotionally manipulate your daughter? Another voice, how many other people have you taught lessons to? He backed away, sweating under the lights, eyes darting like a trapped animal. This is slander. Isabella didn't move. She just watched him crumble, her expression unreadable, not joy, not satisfaction, just an eerie calm. I stepped forward then, my voice low but clear. She's not lying, I said. He hired me. I took the job. I broke her heart. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But at least I'm not hiding behind money anymore. That was it. The final crack. The room exploded with flashes. Reporters swarmed. Investors whispered. Board members stood, furious, humiliated. The orchestra stopped playing. The chandeliers seemed to dim. And Richard Crane, billionaire, kingmaker, master manipulator, stood alone at the center of his empire, stripped bare. I watched him open his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Only silence. And that's when I understood it, revenge didn't sound like thunder. It wasn't fire or screaming or chaos. It was silent. The kind that follows a ruined king. We left before the chaos finished devouring him. Security tried to stop us, but no one dared touch Isabella. Not that night. Outside, the night air hit like a baptism. The world was noisy again, traffic, sirens, the distant hum of life moving on. Isabella walked ahead of me, heels clicking against the pavement, the hem of her dress brushing the ground like green smoke. When we reached the car, she stopped. Didn't turn around. Just stood there for a long moment, staring at the city skyline. Then she said softly, "You did well." I almost laughed. That's it? After everything? She glanced over her shoulder, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. You taught me what love costs. There was no bitterness in her tone, just a quiet finality that felt colder than hate. She opened the car door, slid inside, and looked at me one last time. Goodbye, Ethan. And then she was gone. The taillights faded into the city, swallowed by distance and smoke. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, watching the streetlights flicker against the puddles on the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, I could still hear the faint echoes of the gala, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, an empire collapsing. And for the first time in months, I felt nothing. No triumph. No relief. Just the echo of her voice. You taught me what love costs. She was right. It had cost everything. It's been 6 months since the gala. My world has gone quiet again. The kind of quiet that hums, steady, constant, like the sound of a ceiling fan you forget is on. My apartment's smaller now, the kind of place where footsteps echo against empty walls and coffee tastes like reheated apologies. The headlines moved on weeks ago. Crane Empire collapses. Board ousts former CEO. Daughter vanishes abroad. Everyone loves a scandal until the next one arrives. Then the names fade, and the world turns its page. I stayed behind, the man who helped tear down a kingdom, now sitting on a second-hand couch, watching dust settle on unpaid bills. The money from the contracts long gone. The payout from Isabella, too. I spent it the way a man spends anything that hurts to hold, quickly, carelessly. Some nights I still dream of her. Not the version from the gala, cold and untouchable. The one who sat barefoot on my couch eating noodles from a paper box, laughing at a bad movie. The one who said she hadn't laughed that hard in years. Sometimes I wake up reaching for her, half expecting her hand on my chest, her perfume in the air. But there's only silence. I've learned something about revenge, it ends long before you think it does. The fire burns out, but the ash stays. I thought I was done thinking about her. Until the letter came. It arrived without a return address, just my name written in her familiar handwriting. The kind of lettering that always looked like she was about to correct it halfway through. I almost didn't open it. I thought maybe it was better to leave the past sealed. But curiosity's a cruel thing. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a cashier's check folded neatly inside. The letter was short. Barely a paragraph. Ethan. I paid you double once. This time, it's everything I own. Buy yourself a new heart. Isabella. The check was real. The amount was obscene, more than I'd ever seen in my life. I stared at it for a long time, then at the words again. Buy yourself a new heart. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She always did have a way with irony. I folded the letter back into the envelope, set it on the table, and watched the evening light spill across it. Somewhere out there, she was probably rebuilding herself. Maybe she'd bought a new name, a new country, a new kind of freedom. Maybe she finally learned how to live without the shadow of her father, or me. And me? I poured a drink, stared out the window at a city that didn't care who I used to be, and said her name once under my breath. Just to feel it one last time. Because in the end, all the games, the money, the revenge, they all blurred into one truth I couldn't escape. I was paid to break her heart. But she was the only one who ever broke mine.